Let's make this hallway our runway. Way!
The moment Sophie stepped through the gates of Brookdale High, she felt a strange heaviness in her chest, a mix of nerves, grief, and quiet determination. New school, new faces, and a whole new chapter of life she didn't ask for. After losing her dad just 6 months ago, Sophie and her mom had packed up everything, leaving behind the memories that were too painful to live with. She was shy, soft-spoken, and the kind of person who preferred sketching in the corner of the library over gossiping in crowded hallways. But Brookdale High wasn't the kind of place that welcomed quiet souls. It was loud, competitive, and ruled by a handful of teens who thought the school belonged to them, especially Xinghao, Amber Louis Xinghao. Amber was beautiful, rich, and cruel in that effortless way popular girls often are. She liked being in control, liked watching others bend around her, and most of all she loved being admired. So when a new girl like Sophie appeared, someone calm, mysterious, and naturally graceful without even trying, Amber saw it as a threat. The first day, Sophie sat alone in the cafeteria with her small salad and notebook, sketching quietly while others talked and laughed around her. Amber noticed. She leaned toward her best friend Chloe and smirked. Look at her, acting like she's in a movie or something. Let's give her a proper introduction tomorrow. The next day, lunchtime came, bright and warm, with sunlight spilling over the school courtyard. Sophie decided to sit near the garden area, away from the noise. She spread out her sketchbook, her pencil moving in soft, deliberate lines as she drew the trees and benches around her. For a few peaceful minutes, she forgot she was in a place full of strangers. But peace never lasts long where envy exists. Amber and her group, Chloe, Madison, and Riley, approached from behind, giggling. In Amber's hand was a long green garden hose, freshly uncoiled from the janitor's shed. The girls whispered to each other, snickering as they turned on the faucet. Sophie didn't even hear them until the first blast of ice-cold water hit her square in the back. She gasped, dropping her pencil, her sketchbook sliding to the ground. Within seconds, she was drenched, her hair plastered to her face, her clothes clinging to her skin, her backpack dripping with water. Gasps and laughter filled the air as students gathered to watch. Amber shouted dramatically, pretending to be shocked. Guess the new girl needed a shower. The crowd roared with laughter, phones coming out to record the moment. Sophie's hands trembled, her lips parted as she tried to catch her breath. Her notebooks were ruined, her sketches, hours of work smudged and destroyed. She looked around for help, but no teacher was nearby. Even the students who looked sympathetic didn't dare step forward. Amber's friends high-fived her, laughing like they'd just won a game. Sophie stood there silently, the water still trickling off her hair. Her eyes cold, unblinking, fixed on Amber. There was no scream, no tears, no plea for mercy. Just silence. A deep, unsettling silence that made even Amber hesitate for a second. For a brief moment, Amber's smirk faltered. Something in Sophie's eyes wasn't weak, it was sharp, calculating, like a storm quietly forming behind calm skies. But then Amber rolled her eyes and turned away, tossing the hose aside. Come on, girls, she said, laughing again. She's not worth it. The crowd began to disperse, still giggling, whispering, sharing the clip they'd just recorded. Sophie stood still for a long moment, water pooling around her shoes. Then, she bent down, picked up her soaked notebook, and walked quietly toward the locker room. Her footsteps echoed down the empty hallway. In the changing room mirror, she saw her reflection, hair messy, eyes red from cold, clothes heavy with water. She took a slow, deep breath, pushing a strand of wet hair behind her ear. Then she whispered softly, almost too quiet to hear, "You shouldn't have done that, Amber." But behind those words wasn't sadness, it was something else. Something that made her own reflection look a little unfamiliar. Sophie wasn't planning to cry about it. She wasn't planning to tell anyone. She was planning something else entirely. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Brookdale High, usually filled with gossip and noise, seemed to hold its breath. Sophie went about her routine silent, calm, and unbothered, like nothing had ever happened. She sat in class, took notes, ate her lunch in the garden, and smiled politely at teachers. But there was something about her silence that made people uneasy. Even Amber's friends started glancing over their shoulders whenever Sophie walked by. It wasn't what she said, it was what she didn't say. That kind of calm felt dangerous. Then, little by little, strange things started happening. It began on Monday morning. Amber strutted to her locker, as usual, surrounded by her crew. But when she tried to open it, the door wouldn't budge. She yanked it again, annoyed until the latch finally gave way and the hallway erupted in chaos. Dozens of tiny frogs leapt out, croaking and hopping across the floor. Students screamed and jumped onto benches as Amber shrieked, "Oh my God! Get them off me!" Her designer bag fell to the ground, covered in slime. Laughter echoed through the hall. Who would do this? Amber yelled, her face turning red. No one answered. But a few people glanced at Sophie, sitting quietly nearby, headphones in, doodling in her notebook. She didn't even look up. The next day, it got worse. During gym class, Amber hit the showers like usual, chatting with her friends about weekend plans. When she reached for her fancy coconut shampoo, she didn't notice the slight difference in texture until she rubbed it in. Seconds later, the locker room filled with shouts of laughter. Her hair was covered in sticky honey and pink glitter, clumping into a sparkling disaster. She screamed, "Who did this?" But no one spoke. It took the janitor and 2 teachers nearly an hour to help her wash it out. By now, people were whispering. The queen bee of Brookdale was becoming a joke, and every prank seemed perfectly timed, precise, almost poetic, and Sophie. She was still calm. Too calm. Amber's friends started to crack under pressure. Lacey, the most nervous one, leaned closer to Amber at lunch. "Amber, what if she's the one doing it?" Amber rolled her eyes. "Sophie, seriously? She can barely talk, let alone pull this off." But even as she said it, her voice trembled. That night, Amber was lying on her bed scrolling through social media when her phone buzzed. 星号星号 new message. Unknown number. 星号星号. She frowned and opened it. There was a video attachment, no text, no name. Just a single clip. When she pressed play, her heart stopped. The video showed her and her friends laughing, spraying Sophie with the water hose. Every cruel word, every taunt, every scream, and at the end, white letters faded onto the screen. "Tomorrow, the whole school will see what you really are." Amber's breath hitched. What the she dropped the phone like it burned her hand, her chest tightened. How did someone record that? No one else was there. She glanced at her window, her phone, even her closet. A chill crawled up her spine. That night, she barely slept. The next morning, Brookdale buzzed with rumors. Amber tried to act normal, pretending nothing was wrong. Her friends didn't notice her shaking hands or the way she kept checking her phone. Then came the assembly. The entire school gathered in the auditorium, teachers, staff, students, for the weekly announcements. The principal started talking about grades, upcoming events, and student awards. Everything was normal. Until the projector flickered. For a moment, the screen went black. Then, a faint video began to play, the sound of laughter. Water spraying. Screams. Every head turned toward the screen as the horrifying truth unfolded. 星号 Amber and her friend 星号, ganging up on Sophie, drenching her while she stood there soaked and silent. The video was crystal clear. You could even hear Amber's voice. Guess the new girl needed a shower. Gasps filled the room. Whispers spread like wildfire. Phones were raised, recording again, but this time, it wasn't Sophie being humiliated. It was Amber. Teachers scrambled to turn off the projector, shouting for whoever did it to stop the video. But it was too late. The clip played until the final second, the part where Sophie looked straight into the camera, her wet hair dripping, her calm eyes locked on the bullies. The screen went black. Silence fell. Amber's face turned pale, her lips trembling. Everyone was staring at her, some shocked, some disgusted, some quietly satisfied. She could feel her world crumbling. The whispers hurt more than any prank. "She's awful. Did you see how she laughed?" Poor Sophie. Amber tried to get up, muttering, "It wasn't I didn't," but no one cared. Her friends wouldn't even meet her eyes. At the back of the auditorium, Sophie sat alone in the last row, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't smile. She didn't clap. She just watched. Calm, steady, unreadable, and as Amber ran out of the room, tears blurring her vision, she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, Sophie had planned everything from the very beginning. After the assembly, Brookdale High felt like a shaken beehive. Whispers buzzed through every hallway. Students crowded in groups, replaying the leaked video over and over again. Amber tried to hold her head high, pretending she didn't care, but her trembling hands told a different story. She stormed into the principal's office, insisting it was just a joke. We didn't mean anything by it. But the full footage told the truth. Every cruel laugh, every mocking word, every second of Sophie's humiliation was there for everyone to see. There was no editing, no misunderstanding. Just cold, clear evidence of bullying. The verdict came that afternoon. Amber, Chloe, and Riley suspended for 3 weeks. The announcement spread across the school like wildfire. Within hours, Amber's social world collapsed. The same people who once fought for her attention now crossed the hallway to avoid her. Her phone stopped buzzing. Her group chat went silent. Even the friends who'd laughed beside her in the video unfollowed her overnight. At lunch, her usual table sat empty. No one dared to be seen with her. A few students even whispered, "Serves her right." Amber would hear the faint sound of giggles behind her back the same way she used to laugh at others. And for the first time, she understood what that felt like. Meanwhile, Sophie stayed exactly the same. She still walked quietly through the halls, sketchbook tucked under her arm, hair tied neatly, eyes soft and distant. But something had changed around her, not in her. Students who once ignored her began smiling when she passed by. A few asked if they could sit with her at lunch. One girl, Emily, nervously approached her under the tree and said, "Hey, I'm really sorry I didn't say anything that day." Sophie simply smiled and said, "It's okay. You don't owe me anything." But her tone calm, warm made Emily sit down beside her anyway. Day by day, Sophie's corner under the oak tree turned into a small circle of quiet friendship. She never bragged, never told her side of the story. She just moved on like the storm had passed, and she'd walked out untouched. A week later, Amber returned to school to clean out her locker before her suspension officially started. The halls were mostly empty. She opened the metal door, expecting the same chaos of sticky notes and insults she'd seen earlier in the week. But instead, she found a single folded note resting neatly on top of her books. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside, written in clean, careful handwriting, were the words, "I don't believe in revenge, I believe in lessons. Maybe now you'll learn to think before you hurt someone again." Amber stared at the note for a long time. Her throat tightened. For the first time in years, she didn't feel angry or embarrassed. She felt small. She felt sorry. Not because she got caught, but because she finally understood how her cruelty had broken someone else. The video wasn't about destroying her. It was about showing her the truth. As she walked out of the school building, the laughter that once echoed around her felt distant, unfamiliar. She realized she'd spent years chasing popularity when what really mattered was decency, something Sophie had. Even after everything Amber did to her, no one ever found out how Sophie got that footage. Some said she had friends in the tech club who accessed the security cameras. Others whispered that she'd planned the entire thing from the moment Amber drenched her, that she'd quietly recorded it herself, knowing the right time to act. But one thing everyone agreed on: Sophie Parker wasn't an ordinary new girl. She didn't fight with fists or words. She didn't scream, insult, or humiliate anyone. She simply held up a mirror and made her bullies face their own reflection. After that day, Brookdale High began to change. Teachers started paying more attention. Students grew a little kinder. The jokes got gentler, the laughter warmer. Whenever a new student walked through the gates, people greeted them, helped them find their classes, and made sure they didn't sit alone, because everyone remembered the lesson they learned the hard way. Never underestimate the quiet one, because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who can change everything.